Hello, my name is John Reynolds. On this episode of Extraordinary Life Stories, I'm talking to Mark Blundell. Mark is an ex-racing driver, having competed at the highest level in motorsport, including Formula One, IndyCar and Le Mans, winning the 1992 24-hour race. Mark is the founder and CEO of MB Partners, managing and nurturing some of the most exciting talent in motorsport and business. On reflection and with perspective, can Mark see key moments in his career where if he'd had a manager with experience and industry knowledge to advise him, how differently would the outcomes have been for his career? Knowing this, I wonder how much that influenced his desire to manage drivers' careers with young drivers and ultimately setting up MB Partners. As a lifelong fan of motorsport myself and having watched Mark race a number of times in F1 and sports car racing, I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Let's get into it. Mark, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
Tell me, who is Mark Blundell?
A 57-year-old overweight former racing driver. That's about as much as I can sum up quickly for you.
I can help you. That former Formula One racing driver, winner of Le Mans, IndyCar. Take me back to the beginning. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
God's honest truth, I had no idea what I wanted to be. And because I was that rebel at school, I wasn't the academic kid by a long way. I hated school, being honest. I rebelled against it. Didn't like being told what to do. So in understanding what my future held, I really didn't know. And it wasn't until later years, probably teenage years, that I got into the sport of motocross, like scrambling on motorbikes. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a focus and a little bit of an understanding in what I could do and give me some platform to work from.
Yeah, and competitive as well. I imagine because I know from knowing you that you're super competitive, so that motocross probably gave you a bit of drive, beat the next person, where can I go with this? And where did you go from motocross to ultimately end up in Formula One?
I bolted on 2 more wheels. So yeah, I got into a racing car. My background is my dad was a second-hand car dealer. So I've always been passionate about cars. I was the kid who sat in the back seat. You can tell the rear lights of a car 2 miles away in the dark. I can relate
to that.
At the same time, I sat in many days and evenings and nights listening to him, what I would say like wheeling and dealing. And he was renowned for being a guy that would literally deal for anything. So I've seen the Polaroid photographs of a villa in Marbella, and okay, what's that, Dad? I said, we've just bought that. It's like, okay, it's a photograph. No, the villa in the photograph. Awesome. So all these kind of things. So as a kid, my memories, are quite commercial actually. In terms of understanding what makes things tick and the value of a pound.
I love that. We'll talk about mentoring and how that sort of shaped your world in terms of flipping that to, you do that now with aspiring drivers and so on. But when did the reality of actually racing in Formula One become a dream? Because bolting on another set of wheels to then actually racing with Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna.
It was really, in my generation of driver, quite a quick transition. So I started racing in what we called then Formula Ford 1600 in 1984. And by 1989, I was already in a Williams Grand Prix car testing.
Wow.
So, very quick. Even by today's standards, quite a fast transition. And in some ways, it kind of didn't really dawn on me that I was getting to that part of motorsport that was going to be my livelihood.
Interesting.
And also on the journey, I didn't really go in an orthodox sort of way.
No, but maybe that worked for you.
Yeah, probably it did. But that's kind of been dictated in some ways by not having financial resource at the levels what were required, and also being a young father. Because at 21 years old, I had my eldest son, and responsibility then of being a dad with my wife, our son, and not actually having a career. Because at that point I wasn't earning a living. I was still scrapping around trying to understand that I had capabilities of being a professional racing driver.
That's interesting because to be a dad at that age in a sport that's inherently dangerous, especially going back to when you were racing, there was very recent memories of multiple deaths through the years, as much as the safety was improving. So you're now aspiring to be a racing driver. wheeler dealing in your own way as well, and you've got the responsibilities. Did that play on your mind? You know, it's in reflection amongst the other drivers that, dare I say, could just face forwards and just try and win at no cost?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's no way to hide it. I think it is a young man's sport, and yes, there's females in the sport now, but in terms of when I was doing it in Formula One, if you were a single guy, you could be focused, laser focused.
Exactly. No distraction.
No distraction, but also I flip it and go, actually, for me, it worked the other way. It made me focus from being driven to do what I needed to do. And that for me was putting food on the plate and making sure that my family had the best opportunities. And the only way I could look at doing that was by, at that point, doing what I did best, and that was driving a race car.
Yeah.
Because actually, fundamentally, I didn't know anything else. I come out of school with no exams.
No.
I never sat an exam. I wasn't allowed to. If I was doing an exam, I'd have to be in an insulated private room, so to speak. But so we never did that. It drove me on. It made me passionate and hungry. The only thing I would say, maybe at times I didn't make decisions that were based upon career advancement. They were more angled on, actually, that pays me a wage. I can now get a mortgage that makes sense for us to get to the next point in our family lifestyle. But I'm not going to regret any of those decisions. I mean, I wouldn't swap it for the world. No,
it just gives you massive perspective now in your role, helping those that are coming through. But we'll come to that. So I'm really interested to know, in that moment when you're now in Formula One and you've got the names that I've mentioned, and PK and Mansell and so on, did you enjoy it? Or was it always that hustle of proving yourself, beating your teammate, the politics that go with it? And did you also, it's a glamorous sport from the outside. Did it feel like that? Because I get the feeling that ultimately to survive, push yourself in that environment, you're just probably so focused on surviving that maybe you didn't enjoy it as much as you'd have liked.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully speaking, I think I've always considered it a job, so I've always said the cockpit of a race car for me was my office. Yeah. And I treated it as such. And also because of background and where I was and how I am. Yeah. If you came to my house today, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't say, oh, this guy used to be a racing driver, because there's no real touch points about career. And that's always been the case. I've always wanted to be, when I walked through my front door, that was home. That was like my, sanity check of I've come from this world, which was full of yes and glamour and, and then I get into, oh, there's a crappy nappy, deal with that. Actually, this brings me down to earth really quick. Yeah. But it gives me another perspective on making sure that I stay grounded. Yeah, I like that. It stood me in good stead, and I wouldn't change it for the world. No. But it's easy to get sucked into that bubble world and believe in something that actually is in many ways not reality. Yeah. I think that's really good. And it's funny, I remember having a memorable Zoom call with you, and actually the way you framed the background, that's got all the Le Mans trophy, that's got all the cool stuff. And that's clearly, like you said, you treated it as a job, it's work. So actually where in that environment, I can be Mark Blundell, the racing driver, but actually you separated out family, life, which is cool. That's my I love me room. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to go and walk into the environment and go, okay, we've done that and that. Yeah. Saying that, I'm not a great guy in terms of looking back. I'm really big on looking forward. Next? Yeah.
I want to get to that as well. You touched on females in motorsport. W Series. I followed that. I thought that was a really interesting concept. I've got 2 daughters of my own, and I believe that's defunct now. Is there a route you think that will ultimately get a woman in Formula One at some point?
Yeah, I mean, actually, F1 have done something about it. So W Series has dropped away, but they've now created an F1 Academy.
Yes, of course.
So we are now in a new situation with F1 behind it, where I think now it's got traction to go to the next level. Females in motorsport and females in Formula One aren't anything new. It's
but they're a rarity.
Yeah, 1976. I think Nella Lombardi was an F1 driver. So we manage a female driver and have done others in the past as well. I think at some point in the future, you will see a female Formula One driver. It's just getting that right combination. And I look forward to seeing it. I don't see why there's any reason why it shouldn't happen.
I don't know, and I think the more it's been talked about, the more it's been promoted, there's every chance of it. Just quickly going back to that 21-year-old, you're now a dad. I went to a couple of Grand Prix in the 90s, and I remember being, my dad used to be the head of car safety for the Department of Transport and did some safety work with the FIA. So we were in a VIP area with all sorts of dignitaries and future PM and so on. And when the drivers came out of their briefing, they all just went their separate ways. You came out and you seemed to know everyone. Big smile on your face. People were coming up to you and saying, and you just, I guess, ultimately networked. One, it's stuck in my memory. I've been to future races where you've been the manager and you just know everyone in the pit lane. Were you already thinking business? So we talked about that. I saw it as a job being a racing driver, but also there's plenty of people in sport that don't think beyond their actual career in sport. It feels to me like you were already doing deals. You were already connecting with people that have become invaluable to you in your future.
Truthfully, some of that is off the back of school, youngster, not having skill sets of being able to like produce something, put it down on paper, make a calculated decision based on pure maths, for example. So I had to really lean towards what my skill sets were, and those were communicating, building relationships, and from whatever the stages were career-wise, that's really where I've zoomed in on, and I've always tried to do the situation of being, if I've left somewhere, I can always walk back through the doors. I never want to close the door.
No.
And to this day, bandwidth-wise, I've got a great network of people. I've got a great group of contacts. And I hope I've got a great level of relationships with those contacts, where if the phone goes, they pick it up. But a lot of that's also based off delivery. I'm a guy, like, if I can't do something, I'll tell you. I'd rather just can't do it. But at the end of the day, if I can do something, I want to make sure I deliver it. And for me, business, sport, results driven, it's all counted off the back of delivery. If the postman doesn't deliver, his job's failed. So we're all the same, basically. It's the same point.
I like that. There's a real no nonsense, don't mess with you. It's like just cut through to where can I add value? Where's the business? Relationship is clearly important as well. It's people do business with people, right? In context of the kind of people that you work with as MB partners, you've got the drivers coming through. Ultimately, you can sort of share your experiences, mentor and guide. And then there's almost business partnerships and relationships. Give me a bit of an overview of where MB Partners sits.
The core of MB Partners is the driver management. That's where the DNA of it lies. And I'm incredibly proud of. I've got Mike Conway, double world champion and Le Mans winner in sports cars. He's been with me now just over 18 years.
Wow.
Gary Paffett, two-time DTM champion, now team manager at McLaren Formula E and Extreme. Gary's been with me 18 years as well.
Awesome.
Blomqvist now sits in the States. He's been with me over 12 and a half years. For me, that is fantastic. To have a former driver looking after current drivers and having a level of relationship that's based off of trust, integrity, loyalty, because those things don't last very long in sport, especially. So I take that and I really feel that that's a real core of the business. Extension then of the business is amount of partners, corporate partners, global partner names that are, great to have on our website for sure. But more than that, they are great to deal with and do business with. And we do many other things. We're an agency now that almost, I would say, turnkey. So from digital marketing, activation, hospitality, events, we kind of got the lot.
Almost goes back to you talked about your dad, that kind of sense and opportunity. How can I make that happen? I'm doing it. And that's almost grown organically as MB Partners.
But again, everything is relationship driven.
I get that.
And the whole thing is, in many ways, is driven off the back of, even dare I say, like my black book that I had in the early days. Now my issues and vision is, how do I make sure that the next generation of MBP comes through with people that are also holding their own relationships that can, allow me to go on to the next level and open other doors.
I get that.
That's a business problem.
Totally. I tell you what I really like is I mentioned that kind of no nonsense, and that there's almost like a hard exterior. When you need it for business. You need it to be the top of your game to win Le Mans, be in Formula One, Indy. But there's that softer side of you, which clearly must be great from a mentoring and nurturing point of view. Where have you prioritized your mental health? By default, you've had to be physically fit through your life to be a Formula One driver, race at Le Mans. I'm interested to know how you keep fit now and how you've prioritized your mental strength and that positive mindset through your career and still now.
How do I keep fit now? Yeah, well, let's not beat around the bush. I don't. I'm driven off.
So you don't go for a run? You don't go to the gym?
No, not that I'm proud of that. I'm driven off the back of daily business, and daily business for me is.
So you're stimulated here.
Yeah, lunches and dinners and like this. But what I would say is, again, focal point you go through in life, and I'm at an age now where actually I have a lot of close people that are no longer with us, and it kind of starts to stimulate the grey matter that I need to look after myself a bit more. So it's a focal point for me as of today.
Okay.
So going forward, that's definitely on my agenda to look after myself better.
Did you train and keep fit when you were through motorsport then?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree of being, athletic standard. So
yeah. So you literally did that ultimately from a being as competitive as could be in the sport, but ultimately that business stimulation took over, and you weren't prioritizing that. But what about that mindset? It feels like every time I've seen you, there's just it's like a radar. You're just dialed into what's around you. You're totally present. How do you keep that mindset?
I guess, John, in a way, it's like I take a lot of parallels from what I did inside the cockpit of a race car. So, for me, there's a huge amount of absorption. Racing drivers have got great processors. Yeah, they're processing information constantly. Yeah, and then relaying it back even in real time. But at that point as well, I do that in business. So whenever I'm out and about, I'm always like, recollect, join that dot. I need to put those people with those people. Yeah, it's constant.
I like that.
And it's like, you could look at my phone. I mean, it's just like notes and notes, and photographs. It's all stimulation.
Sounds like mine a bit.
Right.
We're quite similar. Yeah,
and that's what makes it work. I get that. And that's what I enjoy.
Yeah,
so that's an important part of it. And a lot of time it sort of goes the other way. Like people will call me and go, Mark, who do you know in this sector? I go, let me think. Yep, can do that. Bang. Yeah. Done. So it's two-way. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's always positive outcome, but I'm saying like it's nice if you go in with a relationship that has a foundation. Yeah. But the other thing for me as well, I'm not scared to say no. I think a lot of people in business get a little bit, it's an opportunity, I must say yes. Yeah. Actually, it's not always the right thing to do. Totally. Sometimes you need to just pull back.
I agree with that. Yeah. And actually, so much of what you just said there, relating it back to what you learned with the helmet on, racing and stuff, is by default, you're going to have plenty of things that don't go right, plenty of failures, plenty of, in your case, a 198 mile an hour crash. Was it 122 G at Rio? Yeah. I mean, overcoming adversity, building up your resilience, which of course correlates into business. You epitomise that. I'd love to just go back to that crash. I mean, recovering from that and coming back from that. How difficult was that for you?
I mean, listen. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a reality of motorsport. It's like no one hits you over the head to say you must go round in circles. Yeah, it was a choice. But with that choice, sometimes things happen that are out of your control. That accident was one of them. I had brake failure. Nothing I could do, and the outcome is exactly what you said. A huge accident. Injuries. I had a clot on the brain. Lungs and ribs collided internally there with cartilage being stripped off the sternum. Several things that were not what the human body should go through. Yeah. Bearing in mind when you see, the Grosjean accident in the F1 years ago into the Armco, I think
the Fireball.
Yeah, 69G. Yeah.
You would double that.
Yeah, jet fighter pilot blacks out at 9G with a G suit on, so proportional against the body. So, it's a big accident, no matter what way you want to look at it.
No, 100%.
I was back in a racing car within 7 weeks.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
But some of it through necessity. Okay. So again, because while I'm out, there's somebody else in my race car doing my job.
And it's your job.
Right? Yeah. So, there's again this balance of what do I need to do? Yeah. Was it the right thing for me mentally? No. Was I in a good way? Probably not. Was it great that my family was supporting me? Yes. But was it also great that I was putting them through all that stress? No.
Yeah.
So all these things go through your mind.
Yeah.
You know, and at the same time, even the first day that I got back in the race car, which was kind of crazy because it was straight onto what we call a super oval, super speedway, 2 mile oval, you know, 240 miles an hour, you know,
Wow.
2 miles in 30 seconds. You know, it was the first time I'd ever experienced that first time back. I went out in the race car, did about 10 laps, came back and told the team, guys, I'm off. Like, I need to go and sit somewhere, drive somewhere, and think about whether this is my future.
Wow.
And I think it was probably an hour and 45 or so. I'd made that call in my own head. Yep, I got it. I'm going back. This is what I want to do for the rest of my days.
Interesting, because am I right in saying you didn't have a manager through your career? So you went off and had that time on your own, self-management, which again is this discipline. And now you are a driver manager, giving that advice that, dare I say, you didn't have. And there's a few scenarios. There's the, I forget the year, but where you left Williams to go to Brabham, and you ultimately recommended Damon Hill to go. And then, of course, the car becomes the most unbelievable active suspension. Was it FW14?
Yeah.
And yeah, you're smiling, and I get it. And but my question is probably slightly different than what you think. It's that whole, actually, if someone had been mentoring another person to go to, I mean, the self-sufficiency, there's a pride in that, and you live by your decisions, right?
Yeah.
The what ifs and so on. But was there an incentive, do you think, to set up MB Partners to help people because of some of the decisions that could have been different from your point of view?
100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, little did I know it, I was doing driver management back then. Yeah, because I told Damon, take my seat. I'm about to leave. You're first in the queue. Heads up. You know, what I didn't do was say, by the way, you owe me 15%. You know? I should have said that. I get it.
Yeah. And have someone sense checking Brabham.
Yeah. Damon, even in his book, he admits that I'd given the nod, you know, which is great. That's great. But I think
recognition
you're right.
counts as something, doesn't it? It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, especially with your peers. I mean, we're all good buddies as well. So, cool. Am I bitter that he's world champion? No. No, wish him the best of luck, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
And listen, those decisions throughout my career, those potholes, those chicanes, yes, it's been good to have those to then try and guide.
You're coming from experience, right? Lived experience.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes, especially in today's world, it's not always easy to translate.
No.
Because, you know, they've got a device and they're doing this and this and it's giving them answers immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys and girls, just take some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to do everything within a nanosecond, because 9 times out of 10 when that happens, you've got no understanding and no depth, no data.
No,
so when things go wrong, you've got nothing to fall back to go, like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
So, you know, yes, it's good to get to places quick, but get there with understanding how you got there.
Yeah, interesting. We've got to talk about Drive to Survive. My wife watches it, right? Never watched the Grand Prix. You're a businessman. You're a racing driver. You've lived through an era where there was probably a certain amount of mystique around Alain Prost and Senna and so on, and now it's literally on TV around the world. What are your thoughts on it? And just coming from my perspective, it's, you know, is it still a sport, or has it almost become a bit too much of a show?
Well, for me, F1 has always been a business.
Yeah.
So it's always been business first, sport second.
Yeah.
Even in my day. Hand on heart, I've never watched an episode of Drive to Survive.
Love that.
Yes, I get it from a commercial standpoint, totally understand it. What's holding me back from watching it, and I don't even think I've got the time now to watch 4 series or whatever it is now, is the purest element of it from my side, because I've been inside. I don't want to watch something that's like fabricated beyond reality. So it would actually frustrate me and annoy me.
I can imagine it would annoy you.
Yeah.
If you had a driver that was ultimately in Formula One and you're managing them, how would you deal with that?
Of course, I'd have to watch it. Yeah, I'd have to watch it. I mean, like, let's be real. But
cool.
No, listen, it's been great for Formula One. It's exactly what you've just said.
Yeah.
Your wife probably didn't watch Formula One beforehand.
No chance.
Now she does, because she understands the personalities inside it, and it's definitely driven the North American market. I mean, it's gone way and beyond. So, you know, values have gone up with it as well. It's been a big thing for F1. My one concern with Formula One at the moment is I'm just worried that it's getting to a point of saturation, that we are too much of it too easily. Yeah. And that sort of aspirational, you know, sport of kings is kind of just getting a little bit detuned So yeah, I do worry about that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's incredible how popular it's become, how mainstream it is now, Netflix and so on. But a lot of the purists, and I count myself in that, and obviously clearly yourself, are frustrated with how it's just that show rather than, and of course what happened at the end of was it the 21 season with Max and Lewis, and just some of the decision making. You're like, is this being done in the interest of the sport, or are we trying to make a last lap charge when actually you've got Lewis on the wrong tyres and so on, the whole thing? There's a sport you're looking at again, this isn't right.
But we're still talking about it now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
fundamentally it did what it needs to do.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Interesting. Quick fire questions on Formula One. Who do you think's the greatest Formula One driver ever?
Senna.
Interesting. And you raced with him, right?
Raced with him, tested with him as reserve driver for him, been on a podium with him.
Yeah.
As pure racing driver Sunday afternoon, somebody who's got to come from the back to the front, my money would have been on Senna every day of the week.
I thought you'd say that. If you could race in any era, when would you race?
I'd love to race back in like the 50s and 60s.
That's the purist in you.
Yeah.
Would you like to be racing today?
Of course.
Okay, but in context of the technology in the cars and the fact that there's potentially a lot less from the driver, that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to be racing in Formula One because it is the be-all and end-all. You know, it's the most purest of racing cars. Reality check. Probably I'm not smart enough to race in Formula One today because they are like engineers beyond.
Yeah, I get it. Computers.
1,000 permutations on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be lucky if I can count to 10. So probably count me out.
Yeah, I get that.
I can dream, but count me out. Plus I wouldn't fit.
Mark, the whole kind of motorsport side of things is there's a barrier to entry financially, and then it's so popular, so many people are trying to get in. What advice would you give to an aspiring driver trying to ultimately make a success as a career?
Honestly, the best advice I would give them is believe in themselves.
Interesting.
So many youngsters come through the door and they just don't have enough self-belief. Because if you're not going to engage with me, I'm already gone. I've switched off.
Yeah.
So you're setting out to do what you want to do, but every time you meet somebody, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Make sure that you engage, and that engagement comes from being confident and self-believing in where you're trying to head. Yeah.
I like that.
Costs nothing.
Yeah. And do you help instill that as part of the? You've got to have a certain amount of that naturally, but in your capacity as that kind of coach and mentor, are you helping with that and almost sort of puffing their chest out and saying, "Come on," and feeding that?
Definitely, because at the end of it, I say to them, "Look, I may manage you, but the head of the team, doesn't want to speak with me.
Yeah,
I'm not the star. You're the person. You need to be the you need to be the act. So come on, let's go in there and let's connect.
Yeah,
and let's make sure that they can't say no.
Yeah,
and you can only do that by being confident in your outgoing.
Yeah,
not always going to get a yes, but it's much more difficult to turn somebody down when they're like connecting with you and they're confident.
You've achieved a lot of success, in context of in business, and then ratcheting back 3 Indy wins. You won Le Mans. I mean, it's the greatest 24-hour race in the world, and 3 podiums in Formula One. Sitting here now, how would you define success?
That's a question that I really struggle to answer, because what is success? Is it success in your own mind that you've achieved certain goals that you wanted to set out to do? Is it success in somebody else's perception of that?
Yeah.
Listen, I can only say sitting here today, I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy with the outcome. More than anything, I'm happy that I'm sitting here in one piece.
Yep.
And, biggest thing for me is I can sit with my grandchildren and we can talk about that used to be your granddad back in the day, and just have a story there that will resonate with me till the day I die.
Yeah, it's your legacy.
That's success for me.
I love that. And if you could choose or answer a question of what is your greatest achievement, what would that be?
Sporting achievement?
Yep,
Probably scoring my first World Championship point in Formula One, because I know the circumstances that surrounded it and the equipment level and performance. That was a big thing.
Yeah. And you're on the marker then, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, for so many different reasons. So that would be right up there. There's a lot of those sporting success stories that I can resonate with, but that would kind of be one of the big ones. Personal achievement, one, my wife.
Yeah.
2 of my kids, 3 of my grandkids. Yeah, that's it.
Family.
I'm done.
Family.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I've loved talking to you, Mark. I've watched you racing when I was a youngster, so it's an absolute privilege to speak to you now. So thank you for making the time to do so. Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure.
Cheers.